Well, hey there, friend. My name is Nathan. I am a sound tech and a musician here at Crossroads Indie. And I just want to show you guys how we went about adding a subwoofer to our current sound system that lacked one for decades and decades before I was ever going here. So I will get started with showing you guys our speaker setup and what it looks like on a typical Sunday.
This is our sanctuary. It is enormous. It was built in the 70s, kind of has that gymnasium-like structure, you can tell, kind of with the metal beams that are holding up the roof and the can lights that buzz. Ooh. Currently we have about 100 seats set up here, maybe a little bit more, and we fill about half these seats on a typical Sunday. The room is about 6,000 square feet, and for the most part we're running a pretty simple setup. So to start, we have our mains, which are up here. They are JBL SP215s from the early 2000s. They were installed long before I ever came here, when I was a baby. Recently, we just got these near-field monitors, which are actually JBL Cabaret series, full-range speakers. A friend of ours was kind enough to donate those to us, and we set them up on the corners of this stage, as you can see here, to kind of give a stereo image, because although we do run in stereo, you can see with these being centered at the center of the room, it kind of defeats the purpose of it being a stereo, because you either hear left side or the right, depending on where you're sitting. And if you sit in the front row like we have it, you're kind of underneath them. Can't really hear anything. So we added these, and they supplement the sound a lot better. Really, it's just a split from the main left and right outs to another power amp. Just run a cable or two. Now you hear the left and right side pretty clearly, which is awesome. Over here is a subwoofer, so let me show you that.
This is our new subwoofer. It was donated to us by our friend Jerry. Thank you, Jerry, who is the same guy who actually donated our near-field monitors. It is a JBL MRX528. It's a dual 18-inch subwoofer. Has 1,600 watts of program power, and JBL really has some of the best sound gear that I can tell. It's one of my favorite brands. And although this is a different series from some of our older equipment, it fits in really, really well. So, and it sounds great. So let me show you how we hook this thing up and how we power it.
This mess is our stage box. A lot of the cables that we send go underneath the concrete through some conduit from the sound booth, which is way over there, and come up through this flap in the ground, which you can't really see, but it's right there. Come up into our little rack here, and we have all kinds of power amps and crossovers and wires running everywhere. I'll give you another shot of it from the front. Got some PV stuff, got a PV crossover. We got a set of amps for our monitor system, and then we have our amps for our main speakers down the bottom. This speaker, this amp on the top, is our new addition. It's a Crown XTi 2000, and running in mono mode bridged, it puts out, I believe, 2,100 watts of power at 4 ohms, which matches the speaker just fine. The speaker calls for at least 1,600 watts of program power, and JBL recommends having an amp that can run in the 2,000 to 4,000 watt range for a long period of time. So I actually got this thing secondhand. It was in pretty good condition, looked like it hadn't been toured around or anything like that. I like this one better than some of the more analog versions because it has a internal control that you can set delay and crossover frequency, so we didn't have to buy another crossover and run it in mono. And it's got easy controls, gives you a level, and the back is straightforward enough. Great thing is that even if we had the sub turned off, it would still send the rest of the signal after it was crossed over to the rest of the system, which is pretty cool. And this simply runs out with one big thick speak-on cable about 50 feet long and 12 gauges. So this runs down here so far and around and here and into the back of the speaker. And the cool thing is that you can actually daisy chain another one of these together. Maybe you might want to get a more powerful amp if you're going to do that, but it works for us so far. Another thing worth noting is that JBL's manual for the MRX series gives you all the specifications you need, and they do recommend that you get a nice cable. This one was like $70 or something like that from Guitar Center, but it is the Livewire brand, and those have a lifetime guarantee, so if we ever move it or break it and it goes bad, they usually take it back, no questions asked, and give you a brand new one, all within just one quick little trip visit to the store. So Although this project is far from finished, some of the next steps are figuring out where to put the subwoofer so that it covers both sides of the room fairly well. And also mounting this guy in the rack and building some cables to replace these ones, which I snatched up real quick. Way too long for what we need, but all they really do is take the mains in right here, and then they go out into the crossover. Really the only reason why I have it set up right here in the far corner of the stage is because this thing was in storage and I just pulled it out because I got everything I needed to hook it up. We're definitely going to experiment with where we ought to put it. A couple tips: don't put it under the stage, although it sounds like a nice idea and sound will, you know, bounce around kind of as if it were like in a box and maybe amplify a little bit better. All it will really do is shake your stage and just make you feel it more than actually hear it, and it might cause some nasty feedback in your microphones, which you definitely don't want. Like I said, we're gonna try moving it around a couple places, but it's a little bit cumbersome to move on your own, and I'm all alone. So the best place for it right now for us will probably be up in this corner here where our bass player usually plays. And the good news is that it's in front of the drums, so that the kick drum microphone won't pick up the low end and feedback. And our bass player has his own amp, and having the subwoofer next to him will probably suffice just fine. He can hear himself. And it's as close as we can get to our line array. That's an important thing, is depending on how far away your subwoofer is from your main speakers, as far as lateral distance, you'll hear a delay when the low end hits and when the high end hits, and you definitely don't want that. The Crown amp has a built-in delay feature that you can set with after you do a little bit of calculations, which I still need to do. I'm in the process. But up here, it's close enough to the audience and not set off in the corner somewhere that people on stage will hear it, and people in the crowd will hear it.
So here are a few tips for you if you plan on doing this at your church. First of all, you don't necessarily have to get an unpowered sub and an amp in order to have a subwoofer. There are plenty of powered or active subwoofers that you can buy that simply just plug into the wall and have the amp built in. Then you just run your signal to it and it has a built-in crossover. Some of these might limit you a little bit on terms of what you can adjust and how, and what abilities you have, and some may not even have a delay feature or DSP feature. However, they could be a lot cheaper and a lot more portable. They're all in one, so they're just way more simple to set up. All you need to do is plug it into the wall. And I know I went through a lot of trouble of finding the right power amp with the right power settings to give us what we needed for this particular subwoofer. But it was a free subwoofer, and we were looking for one, so I'm not gonna complain. The second thing you're gonna wanna do is do your research. Make sure that you know exactly what you're getting and how much power it needs and what frequencies it can reproduce, and how big of a room a single subwoofer like that can fill. Because although ours is really only rated up to 32,000 square feet and our room is 6,000 square feet, our Sunday services volume level is not really that loud. So really we just have it to supplement some of the bass hits and the bass drum hits, and really that's kind of all that this subwoofer is going to serve a purpose of doing. And we have a lot of elderly people in our church who don't necessarily love the whole in-your-chest rock concert type effect now that we have a subwoofer. And I do roll my eyes at that sometimes, being so young and loving that sort of thing. But I gotta realize sometimes that it's not all about me. It's about making the sound for everybody who comes to our church better and have a better experience. So always keep that in mind whenever you're doing sound or playing on your worship team or just serving at your church in really whatever way you see fit. The last thing I want to say is I'm definitely learning as I go. At the time of shooting this, the coronavirus, COVID-19, is affecting America pretty heavily. So I'm actually taking the liberty of an empty church building to come in here and work on the technology and make changes for the better to prepare us for future dates down the road, and take advantage of the resources that we have, and use the gear that we have for a more effective purpose, so that when we all come back from being on quarantine, the church experience will be that much better for people. And please give me some grace if I make mistakes, or maybe a year from now I'll look back and cringe at the way I had this thing set up, and maybe I will have learned a couple things until then, but hey, it's all a work in progress. So if you like this type of video, maybe subscribe or tune in another time, and I hope to post more episodes of the changes that I make and the things that I work on, because I really like doing this, and I hope you learn a thing or two from it as well. So with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.